summer officially begins in June, with many schools being out for the summer, at least in the US that is. With summer comes some free time, or if you're someone that likes to travel for vacation, you have a Steam Deck to bring with you. Welcome to the June edition of the Steam Deck Monthly Games, where we talk about upcoming releases for the month of June, and determine if they run well on Steam Deck or not. And if you like this video or any other video I've made, please like, subscribe, and share with all of your friends. This really helps me out in the YouTube algorithm. And while you're at it, why don't you check out Off the Console? It's a brand new podcast run by Gardner Bryant and Games Revealed and I. We talk video games, technology, and basically anything nerdy. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can watch it through your favorite podcasting app like Apple Podcasts. One of the first games I want to talk about is a game called Papu, and it's one of the more interesting high-profile releases I've seen. It's a co-op platformer with a match 3 and color matching system. I'm not entirely certain how this shakes out in actual gameplay, but what I can tell you is it looks very interesting. And yes, I definitely want to try this out. There was a demo during the Next Fest in October, and when I tried it out, it ran pretty well on Steam Deck. I would say a 40 FPS game. So I'd imagine the full game would run just as well, if not a little better. Papu releases on June the 1st. Deltarune is a party-based JRPG developed by Toby Fox, who's best known for Undertale. Both chapters 1 and 2 of Deltarune have been free for a while, and you can download it in the form of a demo on Steam. Compared to Undertale, Deltarune presents itself as more of a standard JRPG, but naturally nothing is as it seems. Anyways, does this run on Steam Deck? I mean, come on dude, seriously. Yes, of course it runs well on Steam Deck. Deltarune chapters 1 through 4 will be available on June the 4th, with chapters 5, 6, and 7 coming at a later date. Rune Factory, Guardians of Ozma, it's a sort of farming simulator mixed with like an action-adventure game. Fun fact, Rune Factory is a spin-off to the Harvest Moon series, if you guys still remember that. That said, the Rune Factory games have always been more European flavored, whereas this one is more Japanese flavored. I think you've heard me say this a couple of times, but I'm not super big on the cozy games, but this looks like there's a lot more to it than just the farming aspects, so I'm more vaguely interested. I don't really know how this game is going to run on the Steam Deck, but I will say it is coming to the Switch 1, so I have no reason to believe this won't run alright on the Steam Deck. And Rune Factory Guardians of Ozma releases on June the 4th. Dune Awakening asks one terrible question. Well, actually, multiple. What if the Fremen disappeared? And what if there was no Lisan al-Gaib? But other than that though, it's a multiplayer open world base building sort of game. What's the word for that? Oh yeah, survival. You know, PC gamers really aren't beating these survival game allegations. I suppose the big issue I have with this is that Dune has a very wide and very rich history. Almost as long as something like Warhammer. But I'm pretty sure Dune is much older than that even. So there is a demo, and I did try out the demo on my Steam Deck, and it ran reasonably well. Probably the highest it'll get is like mid-30s if anything. And yes, if you have to ask, this is without frame generation as well. Also worth mentioning is that the game does have BattlEye anti-cheat, but according to Liam from Gaming on Linux, the developers have claimed that they're going to enable Steam Deck support. Dune Awakening releases on June the 10th. Warhammer 40k Space Marine Mastercraft Edition. This is a remaster of the original Space Marine game that released on the Xbox 360 many years ago, with improved graphics, improved textures, and a more modern control scheme to match what Space Marine 2 has, presumably I mean. If you really like Space Marine 2, which came out earlier, and you haven't played the original, you owe yourself this. The original is still available on Steam, but it has some bugs pertaining to modern hardware, whereas this should work a lot better on modern hardware. I know the original version runs well on Steam Deck, but there's no telling if this new remastered version will, but I don't see it being that big of a jump in performance. The Mastercraft version of Space Marine 1 will be releasing on June the 10th. Stellar Blade is a PS5 exclusive, or rather was a PS5 exclusive, but is now coming to PC. Stellar Blade is best known for one thing, or rather two things that I'm not going to mention. The gameplay is more similar to say a Dark Souls and Sekiro-like than it is something like Bayonetta or Nier Automata, and I kind of wish it was more like Nier Automata too, to be honest. But how does Stellar Blade run on the Steam Deck? Well, according to some reports and even a video from Shift Up themselves, it looks like it's running very well on the Steam Deck, meaning the game at the very least is optimized for low-end hardware. which is great. The game will feature Denuvo though, and some people are worried that Denuvo is going to have issues on the Steam Deck, and you'd be correct. While the game and Denuvo will run on the Steam Deck and it'll work fine for the most part, whenever you switch versions of Proton, it'll act as a new activation, meaning when you switch versions of Proton like 5 times in a row, it's going to have problems. Some people are also worried that Denuvo blocks modding, but in my experience, Denuvo doesn't tend to block mods. It's just a matter of games not being popular enough for mods. But I can see this being very useful for the one-handed gamer. Anyway, Stellar Blade releases on June the 11th. The Alters is another survival game, except your entire crew consists of alternate versions of you. An alliance of alternatives, if you will. I don't really have much to say on this game other than the fact that it's another high-profile survival game. And PC gamers really aren't beating those allegations. But I have seen some footage of the demo running well on Steam Deck, about 30 to 40 FPS on average, except for dips in extreme cases. The Alters releases on June the 13th. The Gex Trilogy is just that. It's a re-release of the original 3 Gex games, which includes the original 2D platformer and the 2 3D ones that came later. These are older titles made during the PlayStation 1 era, so they should run really well on Steam Deck. I would say 60 FPS, not requiring a whole lot of battery life and juice to play. The entire Gex Trilogy releases on June the 16th. FBC Fire Break is that multiplayer game that Remedy's been alluding to, taking place in the Control universe. It's a 3-player co-op FPS, and honestly, man, it looks pretty neat, but there's no telling if this game's gonna be alive in a few months after release, to be honest. But other than that though, it's a very different type of game from what Remedy is known for, to be honest. And Remedy has confirmed in a live stream that this will be optimized for Steam Deck, so yes, this should be playable. But if it's not playable, then blame Remedy, it's their fault. FBC Fire Break releases on June the 17th. Date everything is exactly what it sounds like. You date inanimate objects in your house. Of course, thanks to the magic of whatever pair of goggles you're given in the beginning of the game, every single inanimate object in your house is given an anthropomorphic design. Seems like a fun little affectionate parody to the whole dating sim genre. I have no reason to believe this wouldn't run well on Steam Deck. It's not really graphically demanding, and I mean it's a dating simulator. Come on, dude. But given the premise that you're given AR goggles in-game, I feel like this might have been a good fit for something like, I don't know, the Oculus Quest 3 or whatever. Like, imagine a VR version of this game, but it takes place inside your house and you date whatever objects are in your house. It would be a lot funnier that way, but I could also see it being a lot more difficult that way as well. Date everything on June the 17th. Ryo Remastered, The Mystery of the Soulless Army. I actually never played the original game, but what I do know is that it's a remaster of an old PS2 title, so there's no real reason to believe this wouldn't run well on Steam Deck. I don't know too much about this game, to be honest, but what I can tell you is that it's not Persona. I mean, that much is pretty obvious, right? It's not going to stop the game journalists from making a bunch of comparisons to Persona, but that's to be expected, right? What I do know is that either Ryo or Dante from Devil May Cry can be a guest character in Shin Megami Tensei 3. But whatever, Ryo Remastered releases on June the 18th. Broken Arrow is an RTS that purports to be, at the very least, realistic. Realistic in what measure though? Realistic in the sense that it's based on modern combat, more modern, grounded combat as opposed to anything fictional or science fiction like. Up to 300 units with 1500 combinations, supposedly. Now, to be honest, I'm not really someone that knows RTSs that well, but at the very least it sounds vaguely interesting. Looking at the minimum specs, it looks like the Steam Deck could definitely run this. But the big question is how well will it fare mid to end game, because that's always the big hurdle. I'm sure this game could run, and I mean, if you're not playing super hardcore, then you can certainly play this on the Steam Deck. But of course, RTSs are heavily dependent on frame rate because, well, let's be honest, anything real-time based needs good and stable performance. And the RT in RTS, of course, stands for real-time. Broken Arrow releases on June the 19th. Mushroom Musume is a weird one. I've actually tried out the demo when it was available during the Next Fest, and I still can't really wrap my head around what this game is, exactly. You raise your mushroom daughter, and depending on your choices in the game, she can grow up to be a multitude of different mushroom species. But aside from that though, I really don't know the goal of the game. It's unusual enough to warrant some curiosity and interest. And I mean, come on dude, this game runs well on Steam Deck, that much is obvious. Was that ever really in doubt? Like, seriously? Musum releases on June the 20th. Outrider Maka was a 2D action-adventure game that has you delivering goods to the gods. Of course, some of these items can only be found by defeating powerful opponents and whatnot, so yeah, I don't really know how this game's gonna turn out, but it looks pretty fun. As for whether or not this game will run on Steam Deck, I mean, come on, dude. You don't really think this is going to run badly on Steam Deck, do you? I certainly don't, at least. Outrider Maka releases on June the 23rd. Shuffle Tactics is a deck-building tactical RPG. I do quite like card games and tactical RPGs, and yes, I do enjoy games that are both at the same time. So this should be a no-brainer, really. That said, it is a roguelike, so you're constantly playing draft every single time you run a new run. That's just kind of how it is. Shuffle Tactics is no doubt going to be a perfect game for the Steam Deck. It looks like it runs pretty well, and I mean, come on, dude. These sorts of card building games or tactical RPGs are perfect with the Steam Deck. Shuffle Tactics releases on June the 24th. Musum Pretty Derby is a weird one. It's a horse racing game, but instead of actual horses, you deal with, well, horse girls. And no, I don't mean centaurs, I mean girls that are representative of like real life racing horses or something like that. I don't actually know. It's a mobile game with an actual PC port, so it should run pretty well on Steam Deck. And Musum releases on June the 25th. Persona 5 The Phantom X is a gacha game based on, well, you guessed it, Persona 5. Now, if you've never played Persona 5 or Persona 5 Royal, then I highly suggest you doing so before you play this game. But aside from that though, this is probably a dumbed down version of the Persona games, so if you're like really into the Persona combat, then this may not necessarily be for you. It'll probably run on Steam Deck, but we don't necessarily know if the anti-cheat will even support Steam Deck, so yeah. Persona 5X releases on June the 26th. System Shock 2 is getting a remaster. This is the 25th anniversary edition, which, as you know, is a full remaster of the game. I'm gonna be honest with you, I've never played System Shock, or System Shock 2 for that matter. I've heard they're really good though, but I just haven't had the time to play. As a remaster of an older title, I have no reason to believe that this wouldn't run well on Steam Deck. You could run the older version, but this newer version works better on modern hardware and has actual controller support, and supposedly has better mod support as well. The System Shock 2 remaster releases on June the 26th. So that covers this month's edition of Steam Deck games, and let me tell you, there are some pretty big releases, but not too many massive releases out there. Quite a few releases are remasters or ports in the case of Stellar Blade. Still though, it looks like many of the popular releases this month will be playable on the Steam Deck. At least I think they look like they'll be playable. But you've got the whole summer ahead of you, dude. Worst comes to worst, you can just find another game to play. Or better yet, clear out your backlog. You should definitely do that first. If you like this video, please press the like button and check out our other videos. And if you like those other videos as well, be sure to press the subscribe button and share the good gospel of high-tech lowlife with your friends. Furthermore, we have a community Discord for enlightened individuals such as you. And if you wish to further support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.